My pleasure at this time to welcome the Honorable Carla Qualtrough, Canada's Minister of Sport and Physical Activity. Minister Qualtrough competed in the Seoul 1988 and Barcelona 1992 Paralympics. She's a 3-time Paralympic medalist and 6-time medalist at 1990 World Championships for swimming. At the 1996 Games, she served as Canada's first ever Paralympic athlete advocate. First elected in 2015 as the Member of Parliament for Delta, Minister Qualtrough was the first Paralympian to be elected to the House of Commons. Since 2015, she has served in several portfolios as a federal cabinet minister, including as Minister of Sport and first ever Minister of Persons with Disabilities from 2015 to 2017, and now as Canada's Minister of Sport and Physical Activity. Minister Qualtrough has been legally blind since birth and is a passionate advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities. As a mother, human rights lawyer, dedicated volunteer, and Paralympic swimmer, she is committed to addressing inequality and championing diversity. Minister Qualtrough.
Hi everyone. Oh, you guys are taller than me. Merci tout le monde et merci de m'inviter à participer à cette discussion importante. I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, and this area is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I'm a bit of a fangirl, so I'm trying to be super respectful, Dr. Littlechild, but wow, it was so great to meet you. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respect to survivors, specifically to those who have come forward so that we can learn, so that we can better protect our children and improve our systems and processes. I sincerely admire your courage. What you experienced should not have happened to you, and I'm committed to ensuring that you are supported. I've come back to the position of sport minister in a time of turmoil within the Canadian sport system and, quite frankly, around the world, a time where trust in our sport leaders and organizations has eroded. Since my appointment, I've met with survivors, athletes, parents, subject matter experts, advocates, NSOs, and MSOs. This includes Hockey Canada, Canada Soccer, Gymnastics Canada. I've heard very clearly about the need for systemic change within sport. Our system is not sufficiently protecting our children and other participants. Our system is not sufficiently holding leaders and organizations to account. Winning at all costs is not really winning. Bottom line, culture change is needed. In fact, it's well overdue. But I've also heard a willingness to make the changes necessary, to do the hard work necessary. And perhaps most hopefully, the system seems to be coalescing around a path forward for sport in Canada. There's a desire to own what's happened, to stand with survivors, but to channel the very best of what sport can be into a new way of doing sport in our country. Je n'irai pas jusqu'à dire que tout le monde est là. Everybody isn't there. Mais je crois qu'il y a une masse critique, but we do have a critical mass. We've made some important advancements. Credit is owed to the athlete survivors who have bravely shared their stories in the media, with House of Commons committees, with government. While you shouldn't have had to, your advocacy has turned this into a national conversation and a national priority. We've put in place the Office of the Sport Integrity Commissioner, to which 93% of funded national level sport organizations have become a program signatory. We have the Universal Code of Conduct to prevent and address maltreatment in sport, adopted by all funded national level sport organizations. We have a complaints process, investigations, and sanctions, all very important steps. Et si certains organismes ont commencé leur périple, comme Hockey Canada, il est trop tôt pour se féliciter des progrès accomplis. And as much as many of us have started this journey, like Hockey Canada, it's too early to be self-congratulatory. Je vois des premiers pas prometteurs, mais il reste encore beaucoup à faire. C'est pourquoi les événements comme ce sommet sont si importants. We've made really good first steps, but we're not there. And that's why events like this summit are so very important. So let me share with you my perspective and some of my current thinking. Like you all, I believe that Canadians deserve a sports system that reflects and celebrates our Canadian values of equality and fairness and inclusion. Comme vous, je crois que les Canadiens et Canadiennes méritent un système sportif qui soit sécuritaire et responsable. Like you, I believe that Canadians deserve a Canadian sports system that is safe and responsible and accountable. Voilà le sport que nous voulons pour nos enfants. This is the sport we want for our kids. Sport has the power to create positive change. I, like many of you, are living proof of this. I would say I wouldn't be where I am today without sport. I honestly believe that. Sport builds communities. It ignites national pride. We all remember where we were when Paul Henderson, when Sidney Crosby, when Marie-Philippe Poulin scored their golden goals. Don't you remember? Like, I remember this. But with insufficient safeguards and accountability, sport can also do harm. Our sport system needs to be grounded in human rights, with human rights protection reflected in the governance and operation of sport. We need to embed accountability, integrity, and safe sport into everything we do. And for me, this means a new approach in Canada to winning. I firmly believe that we can aspire to win within a reimagined sport system and sport culture grounded in our values and focused on the physical, emotional, and mental well-being of athletes and other sport participants. We can be ambitious in our performance objectives and cheer on our teams to victory within this new paradigm. À mon avis, c'est la clé de notre succès à l'avenir. In my opinion, that's the key to our success in the future. I'd say we have to do this. Within this context, my priority as sport minister is broad system reform, with human rights, athletes, and safe sport at the center of governance and operations. I desperately want our system to better reflect and celebrate the diversity of our country, for traditionally underrepresented groups to have equitable access to positive sport opportunities. I want sport to look like Canada. Systemic reform and culture change, they're not easy. Some might find it difficult to own the fact that maltreatment in sport has been normalized in many sport contexts. What goes on in our locker rooms and on the bench and in our stands can be dangerous and very much a slippery slope. And that's why I believe that while strong policy and good governance absolutely must be the foundation, we need to go beyond the words and do the work. Well, we have started building a safe sport system or framework in this country. There are gaps in implementation. There are jurisdictional challenges, and that's not just for government. That's for NSOs. That's for sanctioned and non-sanctioned. There are insufficient resources. There are ongoing perceptions of conflict of interest and bias and ongoing mistrust in the system. Many victims still don't feel safe coming forward. Investigations, when they happen, can take too long. And there's uncertainty and some aspect of fear within the coaching and officials community. That's a complicated mess. But the big question for me is, when I boil it down and I ask myself all these little questions, I get to the big question. The big question is, how do we embed safe sport and culture change into the day-to-day goings-on of sport in our country? How do we make it just what we do and how we do it? And I think we'll find the answer not only in forums like this and future summits, but also in our collective action. As leaders, we need to take the steps necessary to make trauma-informed safe spaces for more voices. We need to listen and learn from advocates and athletes, especially survivors. We need to welcome perspectives from outside of sport, from experts in child protection and community policing. Nous devons parler des sujets que nous avons évités jusqu'à maintenant. Parler de ce qui se passe réellement. We need to talk about things that we've avoided talking about and actually face them head on. We need to talk about racism and misogyny and homophobia and transphobia. We need to talk about the negative, inappropriate, and dangerous behavior that has been normalized, the behavior that happens every day, at every practice and at every game. The language used, the gestures, the mockery, the intimidation. Where do we draw the line? We need to talk about roles and responsibilities. Parents, athletes, officials, administrators, volunteers, spectators, and coaches, we all have a role to play in this. We need to talk about how we win, and how we want to win, and how we win well. For my part, and the part of Sport Canada and the Government of Canada, we're partners in this, but we also need to clean up our own house. We can improve and modernize our funding framework. We can enhance our accountability and integrity measures. We can reorient our high-performance objectives through a lens of winning well. Il y a beaucoup à faire. And it's up to all of us to meet this moment head-on. Our attitudes and behaviors will shape the change that is needed. Players, parents, coaches, officials, and administrators all deserve a sport experience that is fair, inclusive, and safe, without exception. We need to show the country that safety and well-being are always, in every sport and at every level, the priority. Nothing left to say except let's get to work. Thank you.